Yes.
Continue. Yeah, it's recorded, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
OK. Takže já bych vás tady všechny ráda přivítala na dnešním workshopu. Vlastně Rodrigo je velký odborník v oblasti startupů a startupového prostředí v rámci celého světa, takže já věřím tomu, že si odnesete z dneška velmi cenné informace a rady. A navíc se potom kdykoliv doptávejte, protože Rodrigo je docela otevřený všem otázkám. A jinak bych vám tedy ráda představila podnikatelský klub Bootstrap. Bootstrap je vlastně univerzitní klub na Západočeské univerzitě. Fungujeme tady jako takový preinkubátor pro studenty, kdy vlastně my děláme vzdělávací akce na podporu podnikavosti u studentů, takže děláme různé workshopy a podobně. A vlastně další takovou nadstavbou je, že pořádáme každoročně akcelerační program pro studenty, kdy vlastně studenté po dobu 8 týdnů prochází každý týden jedním tematickým workshopem, kdy vlastně začínáme od nějaké fáze, jak začít podnikat, a končíme tím, že jsou vlastně studenti schopni prezentovat své projekty před, dejme tomu, potenciálními investory a podobně. A studenti, kteří se účastní level upu toho akceleračního programu, tak potom mají možnost účastnit se podzimní soutěže studentských projektů, kterou také každoročně pořádáme. A je to docela taková velká akce, loni jsme ji teda museli streamovat vzhledem k pandemickým opatřením. Takže věřím, že letos na podzim snad proběhne už v normálním režimu. Pokud tady máme nějakého studenta, tak a měl by zájem se level upu zúčastnit, tak účast je zdarma a může se vlastně účastnit toho programu každý. Letos jedeme online, takže ani mimo plzeňské studenty to nějak nelimituje. Okay, Rodrigo, it's everything from me. So I think we are ready to start, to begin.
Okay. Got it. Thank you very much for having me. I would like to thank you personally, also Bootstrap and the university for having me here today. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here again. This is the second time, right? So it seems we have been doing a good job together. So to start, I have, traditionally, hi, my name is Rodrigo de Alvarenga. And I have prepared a message, a special welcoming message for all of you. And I hope you forgive my awesome Czech. So interesting thing, we're gonna be talking about internationalization, right? So unfortunately, my Czech is really not good. I have used Google Translator to help me with that. But I can offer you also a challenge. This is the same phrase in Portuguese. So for that, we can figure out going international means change, means differences from all sorts of things, not just language, but culture and other aspects. And we're going to be exploring this during this workshop. So the first thing, who am I? I'm a board member, venture builder, mentor, consultant, speaker, professor. I have been doing this for several years now in different countries, regions, European region, US, Silicon Valley, Latam, MENA region, Asia. And for the last 10 years, at least, dealing with startups, innovation, business transformation, digital transformation, corporate side, startup side, as well as mentoring in some of the top tier accelerators in the world, from Silicon Valley like Alchemist, Startup Grind, into the European Union like Copernicus Accelerator, European Innovation Academy, also in the MENA region, Dubai Area 2071, Arab Innovation Academy, and Latam like Startup Chile, a few other programs, and Brazil. So it seems that over this almost 10 years I've been doing this, combined with my previous experience in the financial markets, I have developed some sort of a knowledge on how to not just build companies, but also making them going global. And I want to share with you some of this knowledge and as well as open later on for questions. We're gonna split this presentation in three parts. First, I'm gonna share some data that's going to be like the basis of what we're gonna discuss. Then I'm gonna be moving into practical aspects, and at the end, I have prepared a Q&A session as well as a final message for all of you. Going global, startups, internationalization. It probably is at least a little scary to think about going global because you're going to be moving out of your comfort zone. You're going to be moving out of your country. You're going to be moving out of your city, and everything that is going to happen will differ from what you were accustomed before leaving this warm little place that we call home, right? But there are a lot of ways you can prepare yourself and make the most out of it. Back to the basics in 3 lessons. Again, we're going to be talking first about the basic aspects and like some sort of a knowledge over the subject, and then we're going to be building up practical aspects. Lesson 1. So it's absolutely impossible to build an innovative country without reshaping the environment. That means unless you are actually, dealing with a country or an ecosystem, a city, etc., changing aspects of it, it's quite hard to build um, an innovative country or a city or a university, okay, for that matter. So you need an environment that is highly creative, functional, diverse, that combines talent, education, openness, entrepreneurship friendly, regulations in terms of regulations and capital. Lesson 2, global mindset. That means this is a Thunderbird study that comprises the three most important um, sources of capital that you need in order to successfully have a global mindset. Psychological capital, social capital, and intellectual capital. That means different aspects of the different aspects on the way you foresee your challenges, but more than this, also how you see the world and how you interact with this. So first, psychological capital. This is why you do it, your motivation. That relates to passion for diversity, quest for adventure, self-assurance. The second one is how you interact, how you impact. This is intercultural empathy, interpersonal impact, diplomacy. Some of the characteristics that represent this source of capital. And third, this is how you process or how you learn things. Cognitive complexity, cosmopolitan outlook, global business savvy. That means these characteristics will assure you that you do have some sort of global intellectual capital. And all three will be needed to successfully support your efforts. Lesson 3, ownership. Ownership is perhaps the most important aspect because this relates to not what you have learned, not about your ecosystem, but relates to you, who you are. Do you actually take ownership of what you're doing or the challenges that you're about to face? That means over time, I have learned that ownership comes from the 3 T's. Transparency, trust, and tolerance. Let me explain you why. Transparency in this case means people have access and are informed about the golden circle items. Why, how, and what, combined with metrics, goals, and expected performance. Remember, we are talking about business here, right? So in that sense, transparency means, are your team members, are your employees, your contributors informed about the why, the how, and the what of the company? Are these items combined with metrics, goals, expected performance? Do they know this clearly and transparently? Trust. Trust comes from having an open environment where people can express their doubts, concerns, and opinions without fear of punishment. If you have like a team that feel comfortable enough not to disagree per se, but to tell you or to ask you, to ask the leadership of a company you startup questions about the whys, the hows, and the whats without fearing that they're going to be punished. This means they can trust the environment, they can trust the leadership. And without this kind of trust, they're going to be and only giving you their time. That means from 8 to 5 or 9 to 6, whatever, they're going to be there for that. But they're not going to swim the extra mile. They're not going to move the extra mile forward because they're not actually trusting the environment. Tolerance. That comes from leading people to excel, but also accepting failures along the way and to support your team's learning curve. If you want to go global, if you want to expand your company from the city that you live in into your country and then Europe region, Europe Union, or perhaps internationally, unless you can help your team to excel at the same time that you recognize they're going to make mistakes along the curve, because this is called the learning curve for a reason. That means people are learning things on the way. They're like, okay, now I do this kind of tasks. I have this goals, and perhaps tomorrow the company is growing. They're going to have different goals, different tasks, different challenges to face. So they're going to be learning as the leadership will, and understanding this and implementing this tolerance, not in the sense that you accept everything, but in the sense that you recognize people will make mistakes, and provided that they are trying to get it right, they're putting an effort and they are learning from it, you're good to go. Let me offer you a case study. Startup Chile back there in 2010 launched, funded by a Chilean development agency called Corfu, an accelerator called Startup Chile. They conceived this accelerator as a means to create a huge change in Chile. They were looking for changing the mindset, local mindset, the culture surrounding entrepreneurship, and also developing technology entrepreneurship hub within Latin America. Three things that they didn't have in the very beginning. Also founded this to increase the international recognition and perception about Chile. Chile was well known at that time as a country exporting very basic products, wine, for example, and minerals. That's it, copper, basically. So they were trying to change the perception of the world, as well as to build other assets as a country goes to become not just a commodity-based country, an economy based on commodities, but an economy based on technology entrepreneurship. Startup Chile has accelerated so far more than 1,600 companies from 85 countries, 3 times more companies from overseas than from Chile. These numbers are from 2018, 2019, depending on the number, but it's just to give you a feeling of what it means startup Chile to Chile at nowadays. They have been credited as the inspiration behind other public accelerator programs in over 50 countries. Brazil, Argentina, Peru, Mexico, Colombia, Malaysia, Jamaica, South Korea, and others. And that's because they were the first, and they have done it in a way that after almost at this point 10 years, they have built this recognition out of scratch. Basically, they were not known as a technological country beforehand. So some numbers: success snapshot, key figures to same time to 2018, 2019. Portfolio valuation in 1.4 billion US dollars. That's bigger now. Almost 55% survival rate. Overall retention rate of almost 57%. Global sales above 700 million US dollars and more than 400 million US dollars fundraised in the past 12 months. That means 2019, 2020 is still not published yet. But they have raised, startups that have passed through this acceleration program have raised more than $1 billion US dollars and 42 exits. This is a pretty amazing number for a country not known 10 years ago as a country that produced technology. So what they were looking for in the very beginning, they were looking for connections within the Chilean market. That means they were trying to connect Chile with startups from abroad, corporates from abroad, and also the corporations within the Chilean market with not just technology per se, but the entrepreneurship as a whole, so they could support the development of startups, tech-based startups out of a country that used to be an exporter of commodities, mainly wine and copper. Knowledge transfers into the ecosystem. In the very, very beginning, they didn't have any know-how. So by inviting foreign startups and founders and investing in such startups without any equity whatsoever, they built this learning curve to teach not just the Chilean entrepreneurs or young talents or university students, but also the entire country to change the culture. And thus, basically transferring knowledge in terms of how to be an entrepreneur, how to build a company. Besides this, they also created international connections, very relevant international connections. So far, they are still the most relevant accelerator in Latin America, well connected, and they have partnered with accelerators in the Silicon Valley and other places to help the startups they accelerated to move forward. Why am I sharing this with you? Well, I'll explain in a minute, but I have just one question. What are the essential assets that allowed Startup Chile's success? I'll give you like 30 seconds to think about it, but try to, out of all that I have explained, what do you think are the most relevant, essential assets that have played an important role in Startup Chile's success? Well, I can share with you. Ecosystem support, that refers to what I explained before, the landscape. Global mindset, also explained in a few slides back, and the human capital, that relates to ownership. That means people, entrepreneurs, founders. Without these three things, it wouldn't be possible for Startup Chile to reach the success they have reached, nor to build such a relevant startup accelerator in a region that was not known as a tech-based region. So why am I bringing this up to share with you? Because it is important for you to understand that you may have like Bootstrap, the university, that means the landscape. You may be founders and you might have startups right now, or you're planning to build startups later on. But unless you're capable of understanding that this is a people-driven development, this is a people-driven success curve. That means it will always depend on people, the founders, the entrepreneurs, their teams, their employees, as well as the ownership that they have over this success they pretend to reach. They're going for it, as well as the combination of all the other factors. You may have the best accelerator in the world, unless you are willing to take the risk and to own such a challenge, that's not going to happen. So your role in this is one of the most, if not the most relevant in all the startup scene, which means taking the risk of becoming an entrepreneur, founding a company, and managing to move this company up the ladder until it reaches success. And by success, I don't mean not necessarily just money. I mean a combination of sure money, because it's going to pay you off, but not just money, money plus satisfaction, realization, purpose, and changes in the surroundings. As I showed you, Startup Chile's case, the country changed over 10 years from commodity-based economy towards the most relevant economy in terms of producing, at least the most relevant accelerator, producing tech-based startups, also contributing to the economy and connecting Chile with the world. Okay, then I saw that somebody's, I guess, let me stop here for a moment. So, going international, main aspects to consider. This is where I'm gonna start the second part, in which we're gonna go more practical over aspects that will be either lived by you or tried by you, or somehow is going to affect you in the case you decide to move internationally. So let us stop a little bit at this moment to just check if you have any questions instead of moving forward. Otherwise, you're gonna forget and we will lose the opportunity to check. Okay, any questions whatsoever regarding this first part? If you would like to share, you can either write it down on the chat, or I guess you can open your mic and just ask. That's up to you. I know the first question is kind of weird because nobody wants to be the first, right? So don't feel ashamed. You can write it down and I can answer it either right now or later on. Just let me know here so I can either continue or I'll wait for you. Okay, then, no questions. So let's move forward. Okay, yeah. Part one, about your company and team. I can share this later on if you wish, but you're gonna have access to the recording, so it's up to you the way you prefer to receive the information. But there will be a lot of questions from now on. Management and leadership. So these are the most important questions you need to sort it out regarding management and leadership. Let's imagine for a moment that we are all founders. We have founded a startup. It is up and running. We are here in Czech Republic and we are considering moving overseas. So then the first thing you need to do is to take this presentation later on as like a guidebook and start answering all the questions that I'm posing here. Okay, it's gonna help you to organize your thoughts. It's gonna help to you. It's gonna help you to organize the knowledge or the answers you need in order to move forward, and it's also going to support you in terms of organizing the process itself. First, let me say, is it better to go international only and only when you have already established your startup and you have sales in your city or your home country, and then you move forward? Or is it better if you do it or think about it and prepare yourself from day one? Well, if you go around in the world, you're gonna find these two types and a few others, but these are the most common types. The guys or girls or teams that started thinking about an international startup from day one, and the other group of people who decided to, I'm gonna check on this as soon as I am already established, validated, and I have a relevant stake in the market in my country. Like I have some sort of a relevant market share or something like this, or I am well funded. So yes, now I can think about it. Which one is right or wrong? There is no right or wrong. You can do either way, but there are differences that can affect your business. For example, if you are based in a small economy country, I mean, in the European Union, you have access with kind of the same rules of engagement to a lot of countries. So you do have access to a bigger market. But if you think about Czech Republic alone, it's a smaller market. For example, I'm based in Brazil. Brazil is a huge market, 210 million people, eighth economy in the world, etc. But at the same time, that doesn't mean every business here will have a huge market. That depends on what you are doing. So no matter if you are in a small market or city or a large market, your business will access some sort of a profile of customers. And what you need to know and understand is, am I focusing on the right persona? Yes. Okay. So next question is, am I targeting the best market, or is there a bigger and a better market other than my own? Coming back to management and leadership. So first question, do you have the experience? In general, unless you have moved internationally as a manager or a owner or a founder with a previous company, you don't have the experience to move or to go international. That's given, right? But that's not necessarily a problem, because there are means to solve this that you can use to prepare yourself or to support yourself and your team to go. But the question remains, do I have the experience? And you must be very honest with yourself. No, I don't. Where I'm lacking experience? Is it about management or leadership? Is it about accounting? Is it about international rules or regulations? You need to understand this, because then you know what sort of skills or resources you must look for. Do you have the manpower? That means, is your team big enough to support these movements, to support your startup moving international? Do you have the necessary number of people? Are they already in place, or do you need to hire? Can you acquire it? So in case you don't have a big enough team, or you don't have all the necessary manpower or experience, can you hire it? Can you acquire it? Can you invite someone in? Can you invite a new founder, co-founder, or can you bring in new team members? Do you have support from either your investors, existing investors, your board, advisors, mentors, could be a university, an accelerator? So you need to think about this, because in case you have, you need to talk to these resources. For example, for you guys and girls, you can go to the bus stop office and talk to Rana to say, hey, I'm thinking about going international. How can you help me? What sort of help can I expect from bus stop? Let's imagine, for the sake of an example, that Radna says, yeah, well, yes, I can help you find the right advisor. Can you fund this? No, I can't. This is just an example, okay? So do you know someone who can? And perhaps she can connect you with the university, and so on and so forth. So having these answers clear in front of you will actually help you to manage the process. Then, on the other hand, who will lead this challenge? Is there a specific person in your team? Are you, for example, asking your product manager or your one founder, a specific founder, or could be like a business developer? Hey, you're going to be in charge of developing or disembarking into Brazil. Who's going to be leading this? Is he or she ready? How can you support or help? So you must have someone in charge, or at least accountable for a project like this. I'm going to go international to launch our product or service in another market. There must be someone responsible. This person will be in charge of or accountable for everything related to this project, to this very important decision you have taken. So help this person. This is not something that everybody in your startup or your corporate needs to know. The people involved with the project, the people really accountable for it, the guys and girls who will be actually working on it, they are the ones who need to know how to do it, or they are the ones who need support. Next, culture. Does your business startup already have a culture? Are you, let's say, still three friends working in your garage and you're pretty much developing whatever so you can launch a platform or a service or an app? In that case, you still don't have a culture yet, because you're dealing with two of your friends. You're basically managing a very contained relationship environment. So whenever you start having employees or team members who are not founders, then you're going to start having a culture, because you're going to need to decide on, how am I going to deal with these other guys and girls? How am I going to deal with the fact that I have an employee or a team member who does this and this? And this goes on until you reach a specific number, could be 10 or could be a little more. But when you start growing faster, growing your team faster than you can absorb people one by one. When you start hiring 2, 3 people at the same time, they're gonna disembark into your company, and that means they're gonna be asking how things are done here. What should I do? How can I do it? Um, who can give me my password to access the platform, etc. These are going to change the dynamics of your environment. So you need to know if you already have a culture, what is it? If you're not yet in a place in which you have a clear culture, no problems whatsoever. But then you're gonna depend on this because culture is basically like the guidebook. Whenever you read, let's imagine we decided all together to apply for jobs at Ernst Young, and we're all hired. They're gonna give us a guidebook day one. We're gonna read there everything we need to know to understand the environment we're in, how things work, who should we talk to, how to do basic stuff like I forgot my password, etc. Blah blah blah. So in our case, in a startup case, that means culture is going to be like this guidebook. It starts with the founders. It moves forward as you hire more and more people and you get bigger in terms of the size of your team, and will basically serve as the rules of engagement, and it will tell people the values you have and how the environment is going to work. At this very beginning, it may not seem that important, but this is going to play one of the most important roles in the future when you are big enough to not know all your employees by name and their pets name. So is it a closed or an open culture? Are you open to change? Are you open in the sense of being welcoming, or are you like a closed culture? That means only it's a boys or girls club, or it's something that people cannot access that easily, or is it something that is very strict, or how is it? You need to understand such characteristics so you can apply this when you're talking to people who are going to be facing the challenge of disembarking your business into a different country. Does it follow the treaties? Remember, transparency, trust, and tolerance. Are you ready for change? That means if you are getting bigger, your culture is going to change. The very reason is this. Imagine you have 3 founders. Then you move from this to 10 people in total. 70% of your team is not you, is not the founders. Let's imagine from 10 to 30. That means many more people, 3 times more people than before, all of them just arriving into a company. They will change your culture because they are not accustomed to the way you want to do things. Either you teach them or they're gonna change your culture one way or another. So it is important to understand that culture will change over time as you get bigger. What you can do is, instead of trying to avoid changes, which is impossible, you can manage and lead the changes into something that you believe in. Skills and competences. Remember, I'm still talking about your company, your team of founders, your team of people, and everything that is happening within your startup or corporate or SME. Do you own your technical skills and competences? This may seem like a strange question, but for example, I know a lot of startups that advertise their AI startups, but they're using Watson from IBM. That means they don't own the technical skills and competences. They are developing upon IBM's. So in case IBM decided to, hey, I'm gonna turn you off, your business is practically out of the market, like this. Are they internal or external? This is important. Perhaps you know already someone who started a startup, like an app, and hired a developer to build it up. Is it bad or good? Doesn't matter. In the very beginning, it's acceptable. You can do it because you're testing, you're making sure, you're trying to check if the market is responding well. But then you need to understand what are the core business of your startup. And this should be internal resources. Whatever else could be external. For example, let's imagine that we are building an AI that deals with tourism. Is accounting a core business skill that we need? No, could be hired from a third party. Human resource management. It's good to have that because then you can develop your company's management skills. But then it could also be hired from outside. For example, the development of your AI, should you hire internally or externally? If you can, internally, because then you own the intellectual property. You own whatever software you're developing, whatever intelligence, whatever AI, whatever. If you hire Watson to do it, it's not yours. So that's the important thing to understand here. It is possible to work with external resources, and most of the time it's wise to do so until you need to have it internally, or if we're talking about the core business of whatever you're developing and trying to sell, preferences, if you can go and do it internally. Do you have what is needed? Do you have all the skills and competences that you need to do it internally or not? Here I'm talking about the core business. All the other things you need that are not exactly core, you can always consider the possibility of hiring from a third party without any problems. On the other hand, do you own your business development skills and competences? Business development could be associated with sales. It's more than just sales, but one of the most important tasks within business development is selling. Do you own this or are you relying on third parties? Can you rely on third parties? Up to a certain point, yes. But if you don't really don't actually know exactly how to sell your product or service, that's going to pose a problem for you soon enough. There are two really, I would say, two aspects of building a new company, a startup, if I will, that you can't avoid. You must have a product or a service and you must sell, because then you have the necessary resources, the funds, I mean, to pay for everything else. Accounting is important, human resources important, all the other stuff is or will be important, but unless you have a product or service that you can actually sell and you can assure it works, and you actually sell it, you actually deliver it, then you have a problem, because this you can't replace these two things. Everything else could be done in different ways, but this too, you must own, you must learn how to own this. So Business development resources, are they internal or external? You can start, for example, well, I'm going to hire a third party to help us, to teach us, to help us to figure it out. But then whenever we know enough, whenever we learn, we're going to be doing this ourselves. Yeah. Can you have partnerships to disembark in a new market? Yes. Can you have affiliated programs? Yes. But all these things can be done provided that you also own and know how to sell your product or service. Do you have what is needed? So again, you need to think about this. Then the last aspect is funds and resources. So funds and resources means, okay, we are talking about going international. That will require money and time and people, to say the least. But these are the three most important resources you will need. So do you have enough cash flow to fund it? Do you have support from your investors? Do you have support from the founders and mentors and advisors, accelerator, incubator, whoever else? Do you have or have access, do you already have or have access to such resources? Do you have time and energy? Do you have the time to dedicate either yourself or a team member or another person who's going to be in charge of this challenge? Do you have the energy? Doesn't mean you literally, but you, I mean the company. For example, if you're struggling to develop your product, you are facing a lot of challenges. Your DevOps is not working well yet because you're lacking people. That's not the best moment to start an internationalization process because it's going to hit hard your dev team and they're going to be overwhelmed. They won't have enough energy to deal with whatever problem you already had and adjusting the product or the service for a different market. So you need to think carefully about it. Okay, part two. Again, I'm going to make a small pause here so we can check for questions. Later on, we're going to have a Q&A session. So don't worry, you're going to have another opportunity to ask, but I just want to check if you have any questions regarding the first part, which is basically everything related to your company, your startup, your team, your resources, either people or funds or time or whatever else. Remember, feel free to write it down on the chat and then I can get back to you later on, okay? Great. Let's move forward. About the destination. So part one, we have discussed your company. Part two, we're going to discuss a little bit about the destination itself. So there are a bunch of questions you need to ask yourself when assessing the destination. So whatever market, of course, you need to do, and it's really worth mentioning, if you decide to move abroad to disembark or start selling your product or service platform, whatever, in a different country, that should come from some sort of a market research. I'm not talking about market research in here, but most of the subjects included in a market research, most of the items, the questions you need to answer, they're already here, but they are explained in a different way. So first thing to consider, whatever market, culture. Do you know or have access to people from the destination? So let's imagine you're gonna sell a platform to Brazilians. So before today, did you know any Brazilian? If not, that means you're going to a country that you don't know anybody. This must change. You must try to get to know someone there. And there are plenty of ways you can do it. You can chat with people, social media, you can go to events, hackathons, whatever, and participate in international hackathons, for example, and try to look for Brazilians, and then you start talking to them. LinkedIn, whatever. From now on, you know at least one, me, right? So probably I can expect messages from you asking questions about Brazil. So do you know someone? If so, you should talk to this person to, update yourself, what's going on down there or up there. Talk about characteristics, talk about the problem that you are trying to solve. Don't talk about your solution, because then it will seem that you're trying to sell something. Just ask questions about the environment. If there's demand for a specific problem, if there are people suffering from, or corporates or whatever, suffering from a specific pain. The same way you have validated or will validate your startup using canvases, the lean canvas or the business model generator, you can apply to a different market. If you're going for a different market, you can apply the same steps to check that market, that problem, to check the persona and be sure that it makes sense. How well do you understand the culture? If you've never been there, you don't know anybody, that means you don't know the culture. So this is something you need to change. Rodrigo, is it better to try to go for a market that I know the culture and I know people there? Yes and no, that depends. That depends on one thing. We are talking about a company that sells a specific item or service. So let's imagine that you know a country nearby you, but there's nobody there willing or looking for a solution like this. You shouldn't bother to go there. You must target countries and markets that are looking for solutions in which you fit. So that perhaps may pose you this challenge of, well, I'm going to need to move to a market that I don't know anything about it. And you must learn, and you must learn fast. Either you or whoever you're going to put in charge of this project, this person will have to learn as fast as possible, gen general information first, and then specifics, so you can check if there is some sort of a match in between your product and whatever market is there. Does the local culture validate your product or service? I'm going to talk about this later on again, but that's exactly what I'm saying. Let's imagine that you're trying to sell, for example, um, I don't know, whatever product in Brazil that nobody wants. So it's a large market, but doesn't matter because nobody wants that particular problem, that particular product. And that generally means there is no problem attached to the market forcing or making people look for a solution. In general, it is important to say this: you buy things or services based on a pain, a pleasure, or um, what we could call like a need. A need is something that you need, but it's not necessarily exactly as a pain. A pleasure is different. Let me give you an example. If it's let's imagine today is your girlfriend's birthday. or your wife's or your husband. So you're gonna be planning a dinner. You're gonna go out to dine with your dear one, and that means this is a pleasure. You're actually making reservations because you want to have like a romantic dinner or at least a nice dinner to celebrate his or her birthday. So you're buying a restaurant and you're buying an experience. This is out of pleasure. On the other hand, let's imagine this. It's lunchtime. That's lunchtime for me at least. And you're hungry, like me right now. So imagine this. Um, is it a pain or is it a need? What's the difference? Is it a pain or a need? I can argue that it's basically a pain because I'm hungry, but I'm not going to die out of it. I just need to finish up our workshop, and as soon as I finish, I can go and have something to eat, right? So it is a pain. It is bothering me, but it's not going to kill me. Imagine someone who can't eat and how a poor person who does not have access to eat 3 meals per day and is lacking any meals over the last 2 or 3 days. This person is running the risk of dying. This is a need. This is an absolutely need. This person, everybody needs to eat to live, right? The same goes for oxygen. You need oxygen to live. So this is a need. It's not going to go away after a meal. It's going to be there a few hours later, and then again, and then again, and then again. So applying this into whatever product or service you decided to build or to develop, you must check if the local culture will validate your product or service. For example, in the Middle East, Brazil is the largest exporter of chicken to the Middle East. And there is a methodology of killing the chicken so you can export to the Middle East due to religious rules. Okay, unless we can do it this way, we won't be able to sell chicken to the Middle East. That means adapting your product or service into a specific need or a specific characteristic of a local market. And that's exactly what I'm saying. This question is to help you sort it out if your product is validated by the local culture or not, or if you need to adapt something, or if you need to change. For example, if you ever seen like propaganda from Asian countries, there's always a lot of color, rainbows, and animals and strange things. This kind of propaganda is amazing for them and works there. But if you bring this kind of propaganda into Brazil, it's not going to work. You're not going to sell anything because it's for us it's weird. Doesn't have anything wrong with it, but it's just the way we communicate. It's not adapted to the way we communicate, and so on and so forth. Are you flexible and adaptable to incorporate cultural changes? Um, like the example I gave you with the chicken, for if we are not adaptable and flexible to adjust this, that would meant Brazil wouldn't be exporting chicken to the Middle East. It's as simple as that. So, rules of engagement. Here, It's not just about culture, but it's about practical aspects of doing business. Business culture, or how to do business in a specific country. Negotiation, how do they negotiate? How do they behave? For example, Brazilians tend to have, when having a business meeting, in general, we start with amenities like we talk a little bit about football, about whatever subject, and then we move towards business after a while. We do this to prepare the room. This is the way we do it. If you go to US and do it, you're gonna fail miserably because Americans are straightforward. They want to talk about business because you're not friends, you're talking about business, and this person is not necessarily willing to share with you personal information. So they're gonna get down to the business, and perhaps whenever you build trust and a relationship, it might end in a let's say a bar, having a beer or something like this. When I visited Czech Republic for the first time, it was amazing. You know, I had an amazing experience with Radna and other friends. We walked around, had beers. It was amazing. But for us, adapting to different cultures for Brazilians, it's a little bit easier than, for example, if you go to talk to an American. They are like, yeah, straight to the point, pretty much always. The same applies in perhaps in a different manner to German people or to people from different countries. So um, I've heard before visiting Czech Republic that Czech people used to be kind of cold and not open. And my experience was completely different. It was an amazing experience. I miss every day my trip to Czech Republic last year. So not just negotiation, but how to do partnerships, how to deal with partnerships. What is expected of a partnership can vary from country to country. Of course, cultural differences, connecting and networking. How do you connect and network with people in different countries? You must you must take into consideration the rules of engagement, how things are done there. On the other hand, you must know how to deal with regulations, taxes, labor costs, accounting, banking, etc. Okay, Rodrigo, this is really difficult. A lot of things to do, right? Yes, but as I mentioned, there are things you can hire a third party to do. For example, dealing with regulations, taxes, labor costs, accounting, banking could be done by a third party. But you need to know the basis. You need to understand how it works. And then you can hire someone who is an expert to provide the service. So here are the aspects you need to consider. You need to take into consideration. Time frame. What is your time frame? How long can you afford to fund the process? When do you need to have it up and running? When do you expect your first sales incoming? Do you plan or depend on fundraising locally? How long it will take? In order to build a time frame, you need to understand this, at least these 4 questions, because then you can build up a time frame. And by time frame, I mean, like if you're managing a project, you're going to be establishing the whens, hows, whos, and how muches. This is a sort of a time frame. Local resources, skills, and competences. Should you hire local skills and competences? Why or why not? What resources do you need locally? Should you do business development locally or from overseas? So for these 3 questions, first of all, if you're entering, let's say you're entering US, it is obvious that an American will sell to an American better than whoever else from a different country because they know the rules of engagement, they know the grounds, they know everything they need to know to sell to somebody there. So business development should be done by a third party. Yes, if you can afford for that, yes. At least until you learn and you build your own CRM, you know already, you have customers, you know the place, the grounds, and then you can perhaps move internally. But in the very beginning, business development, it's better to be done by someone who actually knows the field. Which means it is faster to reach another market if you go based on somebody else's skills, because this person already knows how to do it. How about marketing in general? What should be the extension of local team freedom to adjust the product's pricing, support, etc.? These two questions, they're also tricky because first of all, marketing, um, I remember a very old case when Procter Gamble started selling diapers in Japan. There was this problem in the very beginning. For there is this Western culture um, old saying that there is a bird who bring the babies into your houses. Is some sort of a way that the old fellows used to explain kids how babies were born. On the other hand, the same goes and the same applies in Japan, but they use a different story. For them, they used to tell kids that the babies were brought to them inside peaches. So can you imagine someone advertising diapers with an image of a bird bringing babies to you? Nobody understood the message because for them, the same message should be done by a peach with a child inside. Independently of whatever you may think about this example, but this illustrates really well. Another one, TransferWise back there, perhaps you know TransferWise most probably. When they decided to move into Germany, they hired Richard Branson as a marketing guy to advertise about TransferWise. Unfortunately, for German people, Richard Branson is perceived as a playboy, doesn't build trust for them. So after a while, TransferWise went there to try to understand what was happening, and they realized that for Germans, they were trust was built by using and having a seal from a government agency telling that they can trust on your platform. And they moved from Richard Branson towards this seal provided by this government agency, and then everything works well. So the same goes here. Marketing and communicating complements your sales process. That means you must have a room for maneuver, and the hiring locally is gonna give you the knowledge you need to start. The same goes for the freedom to adjust products, pricing, and support. For example, the foreign exchange rates in between a dollar and the Brazilian real is basically 5 something. So $1 means 5 points, let's say 5 reals. Reals are my own currency here in Brazil. So let's imagine you have something that is you sell for $100 in US. If you just convert the price to Brazil, that would mean 550 Brazilian reals. I can assure you this would drop your list of customers most instantaneously because the income here in Brazil is not the same as in US. It's lower than in US. So you need to think about adaptations you need to do either to adjust your product to cultural aspects, to marketing aspects, pricing aspects, support. For example, the majority of all Brazilians do not speak English. They speak Portuguese. They can kind of deal with Spanish. So if you're selling a product to Brazil and your support is done in English, the market will shrink instantaneously because then you're going to need a customer who can speak English and so on and so forth. Last but not least, let's talk about budget and cash flow. Have you previously prepared a budget? Do you have an Excel spreadsheet or whatever spreadsheet budgeting all the costs, all the information you may need, even if it's like done in a simple way, but you need to organize your thoughts regarding costs and projections. So it is really important to have it. Are you certain about your assumptions? Unless you have it, you can't charge your assumptions. Once you prepare a budget and you're looking at it, you can then charge your assumptions and correct. It's better and easier to do this way. Have you checked with someone in the destination? Have you checked with someone in the country that you are moving into if that budget makes sense? Are you positive it makes sense? So have you done everything to make sure it makes sense? Doesn't make sense doesn't mean it's gonna be exactly what's going to happen. Make sense is it's reasonable, it's based on assumptions that are quite reasonable. I have checked my assumptions, I have checked locally, so I have done everything I could to somehow validate my budgeting. On the other hand, do you have access to the necessary cash flow to fund the process? Can you fundraise if you don't have the money yet? Are you planning to fund your internationalization based on sales from the destination? I mean, are you planning all this based on the sales you're going to have in the new market that you are just trying to enter? Is it okay? Is it reasonable? Why? If you can answer these questions well, you're going to be ready to explain to an advisor, to an investor, to an accelerator. You're going to be able to explain this to whoever needed. Okay, then. Again, just checking if you have any questions whatsoever. Not at all. I'm gonna, at this point, I'm gonna ask you really to consider asking questions because, it's weird to present a lot of information and at the end, nobody asks anything. It's, at least for my culture, is weird. So help me out here and prepare a question for me, even if it's what's my favorite color, whatever, but just prepare a question to be nice, okay? I'll be expecting for that. Okay, moving forward. Opportunities and pitfalls. Success factors for global expansion. These are some success factors we have seen over and over and over again in startups that have moved for global expansion successfully. In general, the characteristics are global mindset. We have discussed this before, and visionary leadership with ambitions goals. That means if you're moving internationally just because you're not successfully selling in your country or you're just looking for money, it must you must have some other reason. You must have more to support all the challenges and all the um, all the things that you're gonna have to do to reach success. This goes more with purpose plus financial results than just financial results. Favorable environment for expansion. And favorable environment, I mean inside your company, around you in the country or city you are already established, and in the country that you are targeting. International expansion as a growth strategy. This is interesting. There are plenty of startups that go for this. Examples. Whatever startup is built in Israel, they need to focus international markets from day one, because Israel is such a small market for whatever you are selling that they need to focus on customers that are abroad from day one. Otherwise, the companies will not successfully um, exist. And the same goes for other smaller markets like small countries or regions in which you won't have enough customers to actually support your growth. If that's your case, you must think about an international expansion. Could be inside the European Union, could be also moving to Latin America or Brazil, US or Asia or MENA region. But if you're based in a region that is too small to support your growth, you need to think about it as fast as possible. Carefully analyze data. That means not just your data, the data generated by your customers when using your platform. That means also data about the market that you are going into, data about whatever aspect that is important. You must analyze this and try to learn from it. Of course, I am also stressing the fact that yes, if you're doing a business of selling whatever, you must learn from all the data that your customers generate, all the feedback, all the things that you have already, so you can perfect your product or service um, further. This is really important. Customer centric. That means, in general, this is a characteristic that positively relates to success when going for global expansion. Organizations, startups, corporates, SMEs who are focused on the customers. And use of technology here. That means you're going to use tools. I'm not talking about your technology. In this case, I'm talking about tools, digital tools, whatever tools, technological and technology tools that can foster, that can drop your costs, that can increase your efficiency in doing whatever you need to do to disembark into the new market that you are looking for. Be global without going abroad. This is something you can start right away. That doesn't need to be connected to your international strategy or to your global expansion strategy later on. You can do this even if you are still focusing on your own country or in a specific region, or even if you are not yet sure that you are going to be able to expand internationally. How can you be global without going abroad? You can hire people. You can hire talented people. Nowadays, you can go over platforms like Upwork, Guru, or many others, and you can hire talented people from different parts of the world. And by doing this, you're going to improve productivity levels because you're going to be increasing your manpower, not directly linked to fixed costs. They're going to be bringing into your business different cultures, or cultural aspects. They're going to be bringing creativity capacity. They're going to be increasing your creativity capacity because you're going to be relying on other skills than the ones that you already have. They will improve employee engagement because your employees will be able to connect with people from abroad and expanding your and theirs as well frontiers. It will encourage a wider range of skills. It will also encourage your own employees to develop further their own skills. But more than this, you're going to be able to learn from markets overseas. You're going to be able to learn from these third parties. You're going to be able to learn from what happens in their markets. Are their markets ready for a product or service? Would they be considering joining you later on if you decide to move forward to disembark your company into their own countries? So this is something you can do that already start a different learning curve for a company or a startup. And the difference in the very beginning could be perceived as a small difference, but if you give some months, you're gonna see clearly exactly how much difference it made in developing your own abilities, competences, and skills. Okay, then. So here we have reached this very important point in which I'm gonna recap all we have said, and I will pose the same questions I have been asking all over in a slightly different way. So if you later on check on this presentation, you're gonna see that from this point on, I'm gonna go back to all the aspects I have mentioned, but I'll be covering them with different questions. Ask yourself, can you answer the following questions? How? First one, why would the customer in the region you are targeting, okay, use your solution? This addresses problem validation. So you need to answer this question well in order to understand if there is a problem validation. That means if that particular country or region has the same problem you have been solving so far. What are your products specifications that the market wants? Then think about your solution. And by the way, you must ask yourself these questions in this exactly order. Okay. First, problem validation, then the solution. What are your product specifications that the market wants? So once you learned, for example, about the the same problem in Brazil, and you basically concluded that yes, they have pretty much the same problem, let me check my solution. What would be the specifications of my solution that fits what they are wanting? So you go for what the competition is selling to them in Brazil, what are the characteristics, the features, etc. Then you compare with yours, and then you have it. What are the essential experience that the market in the region wants? And that's it. So the first question, problem validation. The second, about the solution. And the third, you're gonna check if your solution fits the market. It's a very straightforward way of making sure your product or service is actually ready for that particular market. Moving forward, can my company deliver it considering the opportunities and threats? Is it feasible? In other words, you're asking yourself, is it feasible? Is your company able to deliver the product or service considering the opportunities and threats? opportunities and threats in this particular case. You can consider opportunities and pitfalls. You should consider all the items we have discussed before. Can we do it in the right price? That means, am I competitive enough? Right price means the pricing that the market is willing to pay, not your price. Can we fund the process from the HQ? That means, do we have the necessary resources? So all these questions goes back to the questions that we have asked before, organizing your thoughts and structuring for you a guide to prepare yourselves for moving or going international. Now we have the official pause for Q&A. That means questions, right? So I am hoping we have questions. Just a moment. Yeah. Okay. Elia, in what ways can data be analyzed? Should we buy information or try to research for ourselves? What is your experience? Thank you. Is this the first question? Yes, it is. Elia, thank you for the question. Well, data can be bought or can be found or can be basically combined to create knowledge and understanding. So yes, you should use all the means you may have to acquire data, relevant data that could help you assess a specific market. That doesn't mean you're going to pay for all that necessarily. There are plenty of sources that are free. And of course, there will be cases in which you're going to have to pay for it. But once you have acquired the necessary, or at least as much data as you can, that makes sense. It's not about knowing everything about every aspect in a particular market, but it starts with understanding the basic economics. That means, is there a market for my product? Is there someone selling whatever could be used as either a competitor or a substitute? Or, is it not done? There is nobody there doing anything. So in understanding the basic economics, income, the way that the economy is structured, access to products and services digitally, I mean, if there is access or not. If you have competition, if there is, for example, it's not uncommon to find data from your competitors, local competitors, who advertise their own companies. So if you've found out that I am trying to move to US, I'm gonna sell my product or service in US, and go to Crunchbase and try to look for startups that are selling similar solutions or alternative solutions or exactly the same solutions, and go for data about them. Do they have clients or not? Do they have sales or not? Go to their websites, look for pricing, how much they're charging for, what are the features they have. Try to understand all this. This is going to offer you a lot of information, so you can learn from it and prepare yourself. And data can be analyzed in so many different ways, but in the sense of considering moving your startup internationally, what we are talking about is specifically learning if there is a market for you, economically speaking. If you can find that there is a market in the sense of customers, and this will be true only if people are willing to pay for a solution like yours, or either an alternative of yours, or a similar to yours. right? So by having all this, you can check um, the economics. You can compare this to your pricing. You can check if your price is overpriced or if there is room for you to increase your profit because you're charging too little. You can learn a lot. It, I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce correctly, but Peter, it seems to be Peter. Sorry for that. How to increase teams' creativity? Have you any example? Yeah, I have plenty of examples, but let me give you this. Whenever you bring someone from outside, it's going to force a change in the way you create things or discuss matters or whatever, because then this outsider will provide different opinions, will provide feedback based on he or his own or her own experiences and backgrounds, etc. So whenever you either by hiring freelancers, could be through platforms, could be directly, or inviting people into a group of discussion, people from different backgrounds, different countries, etc. I guess we can summarize this by, if you're adding diversity, your levels of creativity will go up, provided that you can manage this interaction to be a positive interaction. So people will be working together, complementing and contributing and collaborating with each other. Nowadays, if you go to Facebook and start trying to figure out groups, etc., you're going to find plenty of attempts to increase diversity, which end up becoming hate groups or things like this. The difference is basically how you manage this community of people, how you lead this group of people to collaborate. That's the secret sauce: collaboration. Examples of that. Okay, so as a mentor, I've been mentoring in accelerators in all parts of the globe. In general, what I have seen is that there is a very specific program that I really like a lot called European Innovation Academy. This is a summer program for students coming from all parts of the world, and they're going to work together. And as a chief mentor there, one of the rules that we enforce is basically this: you can't form a team with your girlfriend or spouse or husband or boyfriend. You can't form a team with more than one person from your own home city or your university. You can't, okay? So we force them to work with people from different places, countries, cities, universities, ages, religions, sex, etc., etc., etc. We kind of force them to look for diversity. And every time I've seen this since 2016, it's amazing because in the very first days, they are kind of, trying to figure out how to deal with each other. I have seen some problems for sure, but in general, they figure out how to deal with each other in a collaborative way. And once they do it, they're gonna move much faster than working with people that you already know. I'm not advocating for, hey, quit whatever startup and try again with people from abroad. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is bringing into your company diversity will create a lot of opportunity for you and room for you to mature your company into a company that can deal with differences. And going to international markets means dealing with differences. So if you can develop this skill and competence from an early stage, you're going to be ready whenever you decided to move internationally, because you already know how to deal with differences. So dealing with differences is like a muscle. You need to exercise it until it is going to be, ready for more. So that's, I guess, one of the examples I can provide. And let me know if you would like to have another one. Okay, Miroslav, by motivated goals and management, I think, and then you end. Sorry, can you elaborate a little bit more here, Miroslav, so I can?
This is the answer to the question, to the
Oh,
above mentioned the answer. Okay, I think that we can increase motivation of employees by giving them motivated goals and to show them examples how to manage, how to solve problems. So I think that it's very important to be motivated and to have a motivated staff and management in our company.
yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, well, you are absolutely right. And I guess I tried to address this issue and this aspect in the very beginning when I spoke about culture, when I spoke about the three T's: transparent, trust, and tolerance. When I spoke about, I guess you have already heard this or seen the videos, but there is this. I like this a lot because it's a very easy explanation to understand why and to figure out purpose. So I would recommend you to watch again if you have seen already, and if you haven't watched this, look for Simon Sinek. I'm gonna write this.
I know I know his videos,
Yeah, yeah.
especially the circle video is very well prepared.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
golden circle video. Yeah,
The interesting thing about that is that Simon found a very easy, simple, elegant, and pragmatic way of explaining purpose and engagement.
yeah,
If you want to have an engaged team, that means they need to connect with more than their salaries. And that will happen only and only if you build a culture and a purpose. So unless your company has a purpose that is bigger than money, and you build a culture in which um, your employees, and then all the guys that are going to be joining your company can clearly see that you're attributing importance to purpose, either equally or even more than money, it's going to be easy to engage. Of course, there are practical matters, right? Because so far we are talking about it conceptually, but then practical matters. What you say is what you do, or you basically say something but do differently. So engagement is something that depends on two aspects. One is the concept. Is this company worried about a purpose? Is there some aspect in the culture that shows clearly and transparently that this is important? And then on a day-by-day basis, what happened? They say they care about people. They say they care about, for example, um, people. Let's take this example. The company says that they care about people, but I made a mistake and got fired. So in a practical way, you're going to be failing in terms of building engagement and then motivating your team to go for the extra mile.
all right.
So if you go back later on, when I send you the presentation later on, you're going to see in the very beginning, there is this. When I talk about tolerance in that sense means as a leader, as the founder or group of founders, leaders in your startup or company, corporate, university, whatever place, you must be all the time focused on helping your team to excel, posing challenges, posing, a room so they can grow. But you must be supportive enough to understand that there will be mistakes, and you must deal with this in a way that they feel not comfortable, in the sense that nothing is going to happen no matter what I do, but in the sense of I am they support me even when I made a mistake, and that's going to help them to try to avoid mistakes, but not enough to avoid, reaching their own potential. It is kind of hard to get to this point, but it's gonna happen if you practice this on a day-by-day basis in your company.
Okay, thank you.
So you're welcome. Then the next one. How big was the impact of pandemic situation on startup space in Brazil, or in general? How much has changed the startup scene? Well, Radna, I can tell you that, first of all, the amount of money invested into startups all over the world increased because of the pandemic, exactly because of the pandemic. Why? Um, there are a plethora of items, but let me mention at least three. First, the pandemic is forcing corporates, small and medium-sized companies, startups, individuals to move faster into a digital world. And the infrastructure was not there yet, either because as end customers, a lot of people, mainly elderly people, they were not using digital tools, e-commerce, and I could go on with different items. So the numbers increased a lot. E-commerce, the usage of digital tools, digital meetings, etc., etc. Second, such companies needed to start scaling faster than they predicted, because the pandemic served as a catalyzer to usage. Third, the investors who are not playing this game of investing into startups decided to move into this field, and those who were there already investing decided to increase the investments. So combining all these three items, the money available increased significantly, not just in US, but in US, in Brazil, and from my point of view, in general, we saw that in 2020, and we are seeing this even this year. Um, Besides investments, exactly the fact that the number of customers or end users buying digital solutions increased so fast that the room for competitors increased as well. Those who are ready um, and manage the increase in speed, they have grown significantly. But the room in several industries is there to be taken. Industries that were resisting the digital transformation and the business transformation that goes together with the digital transformation started to realize that they don't have any choices. They must move into the digital. That doesn't mean for example, let's talk about education. In general, there was no way universities would completely move into the digital world, but the pandemic forced them to. Can you imagine a university predicting to have 100% online classes before the pandemic? No, because basically universities own buildings, and as such, they want to have students in there. The online environment is not exactly equals to the offline. The experience is not exactly the same. It's different. That means the end game is not going to be online, totally online, but it's going to be somehow a mix of both things. And it's not just about universities, but colleges or schools, private or public. The infrastructure was not there, and they had to find means to go online. And I could mention other industries, for example, the automotive industry. They were suffering from a phenomenon that happened beforehand, the change from ownership towards usage. I mean, instead of owning a car, using a car. So instead of owning an asset, mobility. But the pandemic basically forced them to fast pace the changes they were trying to implement, so on and so forth. So because all this, the startup world, and I mean, not in the sense of whatever startup you are found is going to be right and it's going to be well and it's going to be having success. That's not true. The mortality rate is really big. It's above 90% depending on the market you are operating. The point is, the opportunities have increased exponentially in a very short period of time. And because of that, such opportunities could be taken, and I mean, could be addressed by talented people from anywhere. In a way, the pandemic also helped in decentralizing the innovation from Silicon Valley into the world. Because now you can come up with a solution, the infrastructure is there, and you can do it yourself together with a team of people from 10 countries, and you can sell to US corporates by being at home in Czech Republic, drinking a Pilsen beer. 5 years back, you wouldn't be able to do it. Okay, next. You have mentioned as an example of cultural differences in doing business between Brazil and the US, a different approach in starting a business negotiation. Could you cite another example of cultural differences in doing business between Brazil and the US? Yes, Romana. Brazilians are not pragmatic. We tend to be like, first of all, Portuguese derived from Latin, which means it's a language that are more appropriate to be used for poetry and things like this. We over explain a lot of things. We over we over talk about day by day subjects, etc. We are more open to share information about our day by day lives. But in another way, it, although this is true, we are also more conservative than Americans in terms of dealing with sex, for example, dealing with relationships. So if you consider all this, Americans are much more straightforward, pragmatic. The language, English language, is basically more objective, and that helps in doing business. On the other hand, if you want to build friendship, they are going to be more conservative. They're going to be more they're going to be more closed and caution in terms of actually building friendships. Of course, if you study there, it's easier because you're going to be dealing with young people, and then you're going to establish your friendship base, and it's going to be easier. If you're moving for business, and you are like middle age and you're starting from scratch, you're gonna be basically doing business. So there will be differences. There are other differences. For example, Brazilians tend to think that Brazil is a huge market for everything, which is not true. Even though we have 210 million people in here, the average income for the majority of the Brazilians is much smaller than the US, the European Union. The minimum wage in Brazil is equivalent to around, what's the minimum wage in Czech Republic in euros?
The average wage is 35,000 crowns divided by, I don't know exactly, 25, because 1 euro is 25 crowns approximately, okay, in average.
Be like $1,300 US more.
Yeah, perhaps, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this, just to give you an example, in Brazilian currency, the minimum wage in Brazil is 1,000 and few coins. Let's say 1,100 Brazilian reals. In US dollars or in euro, that means a little less than 200 euros per month. So compared to Czech Republic, it's almost 6 times smaller than the Czech Republic minimum wage. Okay, so someone is correcting the numbers here. Now I guess you got the idea, right? For example, the minimum wage in US dollars, depending where you are, is more or less 2,000 US dollars. That means we are comparing almost 300 US dollars to 2,000 US dollars, comparing Brazil and US. So that's exactly the difference. Yes, 600 US dollars where in Czech Republic. If it is in Czech Republic, that means 2.5, a little less than 2.5 times the Brazilian minimum wage. So there are plenty of differences, because when you consider this, you need to think about adapting your pricing. If you charge the same pricing here, let's imagine the same price here and in Czech Republic means it's 2.5 times more expensive here, at least. So differences in how to do business are immense depending which countries you're comparing. But for example, it's not just about negotiating, it's about also taxes, regulations, how easy it is to do business, contracts. For example, Brazil is well known as a country that has, like, it's kind of a nightmare in terms of taxes. That's true. If you are a small company coming in, it's not true for you. Or you can opt in for specific ways of paying your taxes that will ease the burden. It's kind of confused, very bureaucratic. So you need to have like an expert accountant in Brazil. That's true. You need to buy the service, because it's not going to happen like you're going to do your accounting in Brazil. That's not going to happen. But once you do it, you are basically okay to go. And that could cost around 50 euro per month, perhaps, more or less, depending on the size of your business, depending on the number of invoices you need to issue each and every month, etc. So it varies, okay? But you could start paying for services like this in between 30 euro per month upwards, depending on the size of your company. Is it important to know individual culture when you're providing something on the internet, or is it enough to know the general culture on the internet? Well, Matej, I would say that it's better if you can learn more than the general culture in the internet, because one important thing is that you know, what is in there, like Facebook mainly, Instagram, whatever, is not necessarily what actually the people think, but it's what they want to show off, right? At least talking about Brazil. So, for example, I just use social media for business. So everything that I post in there, in general, almost everything is basically focused on business, and it must be true because otherwise, you know, I won't have any customers whatsoever, because I basically sell services that are linked to my know-how, my expertise, etc. So if I start selling lies, I'm not going to be around for soon enough, right? But on the other hand, if we're going for Facebook, for example, in general, people are just showing what they want to show off, not necessarily what they think. It's better if you can go a little bit deeper, and you can do it by either hiring, for example, um, a freelancer through a platform like Upwork or Guru, a Brazilian freelancer, to help you with social media and digital marketing. And you can ask this person, you can ask this person to do some research and to get back to you. And this is going to cost you um, a fairly amount of money that is cheaper than in US or in the European Union, depending on the country you are in. But I would go a little bit deeper. Okay, then I guess I covered all the questions, right? There's nothing missing here. So let me share my screen again, and we can move forward. Okay. How to change the Czech Republic's and Pilsen's and Bustop's economics by building startups that can reach the world? This is my final question. I don't have um, other things to discuss with you, but I do want to offer you this as a question that you reflect on that. Basically, by relentless and disruptive supporting support in shaping the culture of daring. That means you guys, the university, will stop everybody. You must relentless and disruptive support in shaping the culture of daring. That's it. In general, the main difference I've learned over 10 years doing this all over the world is that countries like US, in which the culture of doing business helps people to basically move everywhere to do business, and compared to countries like Brazil, or I'm not sure, perhaps Czech Republic, I'm not sure, perhaps a few other countries here and there, which have like, you know, the culture of doing business is not exactly as expensive as the US, for example. What's the difference? Are we dumb, or are we worse prepared, or are we incapable of doing so? No, we are as intelligent as they are, we are as prepared as they are. Sometimes we are even more prepared. We are good enough. Our skills and competences are good enough, for sure. I can assure you that. The difference is that they dare. You know, I guess I'll come back to the question of the differences in comparing US and Brazil. Let me offer this example as my final example. If you talk to an American kid, like really small kid, 3, 4, 5 years old. What do you want to be when you grow up? They're going to say something like, I want to be world champion in swimming, basketball, ballet, whatever. But they always dream really big. They always dare to dream big, to think about things like in an immense proportion. If you talk to a 5 years old kid in Brazil, it's unlikely that you're going to listen to an answer like this. Because in our culture here, if you say that you want to be the most important, or if you want to be the biggest player, the biggest, or the whatever, the champion, you're going to be considered like, oh, you're kind of thinking more than you are. The culture do not award, here at least, do not award you to dream big. It's always a matter of, instead of trying to be different, it's all for us, it's always a matter of, disguising yourself into the crowd. And whoever tries to move out the crowd, like stating something like this, is going to be, hey, come on, this is too preemptive of yours. So this is not probable. It's not going to happen. You are Brazilian, or you are poor, whatever. But at the end, they're going to say some version of, this is not reachable. Think about something that you can do. So I have seen this problem in several regions or countries in the world, but I can attest you that the most amazing people I've ever met in my life, they're exactly these ones. From regions or countries that are not thinking too much about themselves, sometimes not even valuing what they can do accordingly, and unfortunately missing the point of dreaming big. Dreaming big and dreaming small gives you basically the same hard time. It's gonna take the same time, it's gonna take the same energy to dream, right? To execute is different, but to dream is basically the same. So we need to believe that we can actually build something that is worth selling to the world, because it's going to solve a problem. It's going to help people. It's going to do whatever. And by, at least in Brazil, this is true. I'm not sure about Czech, but you can tell me later. By, amending the relationship between, purpose and, willingness to dare, by actually, amending the relationship between these two things, we can actually pretty much do whatever we decide we're gonna do. That's it. And as a final statement, in a borderless world, we have to develop borderless minds so we can go further ahead, unlocking unimaginable changes and destinations. With that, I really want to thank you for spending this afternoon with me. We've been here for more than 2 hours. I hope it somehow it helped you or your startup or your teams. I'm really honored to have the opportunity to address this subject with all of you. I've been working with this for so many years, and I guess my experience in Czech Republic was so great due to Radna, one of the persons that helped during my first trip to Czech Republic. So it's an honor. I'll give you few extra minutes if you want to ask me anything else. But other than this, I would like to thank you.
Thank you very much for the valuable information, I think, because it's very important to know how does it go in the world, I think. So what about the others? Do you have any question? No?
For my part, but thank you. And I respond to you, I am better, but Peter is fine too, or Pedro, Espanol. Have a nice day. And the second remarks, we have evening, not morning. In your translation of phrases, good morning, you must give good evening for us, but it's a joke.
Yeah. Well, oh, that's true, because you're absolutely right. I built this during my morning time, so that's why.
I haven't noticed you mentioned it.
Yeah.
But that's
For you, have a nice day, and for me, good evening and good night. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I'll send you. I have spotted few minor errors in my presentation, so I'm gonna correct this and adjust, and I'll send you back, Radna, as soon as I have the final version.
Okay, thank you.
Feel free to.
I hope Rara will resend the presentation to us.
Yeah, I will. Sure.
Thank you. Lovely.
Feel free to share to everybody. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm gonna stop the recording, Radna.
Okay, stop it.